joining in to look at the hits and misses of the first 100 days, as well as expectations going forward, are Mr. Arvind Virmani, the former Chief Economic Advisor and widely respected economist, and Mr. Sunil Munjal, the Joint Managing Director of Hero Moto. Gentlemen, welcome. I guess we will have Sunil Munjal joining in a minute. Dr. Virmani, thank you very much for joining us. Well, a lot of things have gone good for the economy simply because the world is a safer place. 1 year ago, we were still in the shadows of taper talk, and the rupee this day last year was at 68.55. The Sensex, the Nifty was at 5,200 or even lower, and there's been a 50% improvement in the index in the Nifty, and there has been a decent 30% improvement in the rupee as well, or at least a 20% improvement. Dr. Virmani, but what has the government itself done? In the first 100 days of the government, are you detecting any moves at all? Or have these really been a thinking, pondering kind of 100 days with no comment worthy?
Well, you know, in late December, early January, I did a policy paper called Agenda 2020, and I wrote a number of columns also in the newspapers where I laid out certain policies which I thought were necessary over the next, year and 3 years. If I look at that, so my benchmark is that, and for I think the most relevant ones for the first 100 days are three things which I said. One, I said that the new government would have to re-establish confidence in the government and in the economy. That, as you can see, as you have just pointed out, yes, the capital flows and the stock market clearly show that they've been able to re-establish confidence. How much of that is due to the fact that they have a political majority, etc., that can be debated. The second point which was mentioned in those papers was that this kind of a gridlock which had gone into government, between ministers, between the Prime Minister and others, with the bureaucracy, etc., needed to be cleared, and that's what they would focus on. I think they have definitely again been able to achieve that. The third part was what was summed up in their manifesto as tax terrorism, the retroactive taxes, etc., etc. Well, I would say some progress has been made on that in the budget. I wouldn't say that that has been fully achieved as yet, but enough has been done so that overall I think it's been a good 3 months.
Okay. Dr. Virmani, good morning and thank you for joining us. So those were the hits that you put forth for us, but what about the misses? What really disappointed you as a keen government observer in the first 100 days of the Modi government?
So in some sense that takes off from the last point, because really the macro, what I call, of course the macro balance had to be restored. And I think one of the disappointing things was that the opportunity was not taken to clear up the accounting. A lot of us, including the BJP, we thought was very keen to clear up the budgetary accounting, and there had been a lot of criticism, including from economists. I think that was not done, but so that's one of the reasons, and of course more of carryover of the budget of the previous government. Now, if you think that budget was a good one, then of course that's good. Okay. But if one had doubts about that budget, then one would have expected a little more change on that front.
Okay, well, one had doubts, I guess, on the fiscal deficit number and the tax assumptions, but the way in which crude prices have fallen, I guess by default that 4.1 is not looking like such a bad assumption after all. But I'll come back to the points you made, Dr. Virmani. That's extremely strong, that what you have stated in terms of what was expected, re-establishing confidence in the economy and breaking this gridlock of non-decision making, what was cliched, called in a cliched fashion as paralysis, decision making paralysis. That's an apt point in which to get Mr. Sunil Munjal, because it was people like him who suffered from this gridlock or this absence of decision making. Mr. Munjal, your assessment of the first 100 days, what were the hits?
So I think two or three big things that happened were, one of course was a sense of confidence in India, both within India and also outside of India. There was a dramatic change in the sense of expectations from India, and the mood, which was generally down, changed very significantly. The other change or the other plus was this talk of quicker decision making, cleaner governance, and a whole host of issues to resolve those. What they did do, which demonstrated some of this, was raise things like railway fares, which have been pending now for 10 years. They initiated the move to raise foreign shareholdings in defense, in insurance, and a host of other areas. And that did change the mood both inside and outside of India. A clear message that retroactive action, especially on taxes, etc., would not be taken in the future was helpful. But people had also hoped to hear something to resolve the earlier ones, which has been left to the courts to decide. Broadly, I think clearly many more pluses than misses. Decision making has got better, but there also seems to be more centralization than before. One of the things which happened, which at least the media, I've heard this from a number of people in media, is that from a very high decibel campaign coming into government to an almost complete quiet on the government front in terms of interaction with media on an ongoing basis.
Yes.
That's something which people are still wondering about.
Yeah, that's a very big crib for us, certainly, that we get.
I know, I've heard this from many of you, actually. That's the point I'm making, yes.
Okay. No, but Mr. Munjal, you spoke about FDI in defense and, even in other sectors, perhaps in insurance as well. But this is so much of an eyewash. I mean, it's combined FDI and FII, 49%. We're not really speaking about much in terms of, at least for insurance. So is this, is this government really reformist in that sense?
So the question is this enough? My feeling is this is probably a step in the direction. It's not a final resolution. But it is a welcome step, as a step forward from where we were. And I do believe going forward this will further get relaxed in the future. But even this is actually quite helpful. The signaling is very good. What was disappointing was the inability of the government to carry some of these through Rajya Sabha and not to have Rajya Sabha or the other parties actually support some of the initiatives the government has started. So the very first session of Parliament, or the first working session of Parliament, actually suffered like some of the earlier sessions had in the last few years. That was certainly a concern. I do hope the government and the opposition parties will be able to resolve some of these issues outside of Parliament and allow Parliament to function smoothly, to actually take. There's a whole lot of decisions pending right now in Parliament and waiting to be lined up in Parliament.
Okay. Dr. Virmani, we did a small survey on what the new government has done in the first 100 days, and the sense we got from many economists is that on the subject of food inflation there was quite a bit done, whether it's in the form of allowing states to import pulses, selling food stock out of the granary, etc. In your assessment, what would your review be of how much has been done on food inflation and how much more the new government could do?
Okay, I just want to dovetail that because that was on my mind as well. Dr. Virmani, I would have thought that that's a bad record. I mean, after 5 years of learning your lesson, we still continue with the kind of food inflation that we saw even in the last month. Vegetable prices continue to rise, in an obscene fashion. And, what was an APMC Act reform that was promised? Practically nothing has moved on that, has it?
Yeah, so moving from what I would call the short-term immediate things to longer term, I just want to mention one thing first, the land acquisition. That is one of the things which I had on my agenda, and I was pleasantly surprised that the issue at least of reform of that Land Acquisition Act, kind of past legal mistakes, was taken up so quickly. So that's a positive, as were at least the movements, the initial thoughts on the labor laws, the amendment of the Apprenticeship Act, etc. So those were definitely positive. But you're right, on the negative side of the ledger, in my view, is the agricultural, whole agricultural thing. Though when the government came in, they reiterated this need for reforming the APMC Act, but I don't think much follow-up has been done on that. Secondly, the initial positive thing on approving trials of GM crops, which is absolutely essential for long-term productivity, after the initial reports of approval, that is apparently suspended. So, in fact, you are quite right. I think a lot more will have to be done on agriculture, though, and the focus have really been on short-term kind of inflation management until the underlying productivity and the issues which have been driving this inflation for a period of an incredible period of 7 years. Actually, it's whenever I look at it, I'm surprised that there has never been such a long period. So the implication is the short-term measures may help temporarily. They may help you keep on that track which the RBI has outlined for the inflation. But if we really want a long-term positive movement on agricultural prices, we really do need much more agricultural reform. And I don't see that the government has yet focused on it. But that doesn't mean that it won't do so in, let's say, the next 3 to 6 months. I think it should.
Okay. Mr. Munjal, just one more, question from my end on what your expectation is going ahead. What could the government do in the next 100 days, say, and how could it really flesh out that Make in India theme, which has gotten many people very excited?
For one, I think these 100-day periods are actually, they tend to raise expectation to a level that sometimes if you do not deliver, the public sentiment turns negative. And at this moment, I don't think that's what you want, because there's a lot of work to be done, not just for the short term, but a lot of work needs to be done for the long term as well. And the government actually has made some pretty interesting announcements, whether it's on the high-speed rail links, whether it's on 100 cities, or it's in water, including river linking, focus on energy, focusing on the areas which generate huge amounts of employment, like textile industry, automotive industry, home construction. So I think these are the things which need the next wave of focus. And GST, we are hoping to hear a date at some point, a terminal date when GST can actually get implemented. I know that the finance minister has started a dialogue with the states already and talked of reconstituting the council which had all of the states finance ministers on it to reinitiate some of these dialogues. So I think a quick focus on some of these would be very, very helpful right now.
All right. Most useful conversation, Mr. Munjal and Dr. Virmani. Thank you very much for that quick and succinct assessment of what has been done and much more about what's been left to do.